Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We are presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got Seerat Sohi from over at SB Nation, where she writes once a week. She writes over at The Athletic about the Raptors. She writes at Rolling Stone. She wrote a really good thing about Kyle Kuzma last week, potentially getting into broadcasting whenever he's done. We were supposed to podcast on Tuesday morning, but then some news kind of happened, I guess is the best way to put it, right, Seerat?
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't read. Can you imagine more shocking news, I guess? Like, I can't really think of anything that is more surprising to me than a Blake Griffin trade just 6 months after he signs a contract with the Clippers where they pledge to make him a lifelong Clipper.
Right. I mean, I think there's a context in which you could see it happening. I definitely didn't see him being the first guy gone, and I didn't really see him, getting positive assets as a return either. So there's definitely a lot of surprising components to this trade once you get into the nitty-gritty of it, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of have like a strong take that he's not the best asset in the trade, so we'll get to that in a minute.
That's a hot take.
But before we get into that, Seerat, how's it going? How is life in Canada? How is life writing for multiple outlets on the internet?
It's good. It's good. Canada is, not really as dramatic. I was going to make a joke that, when you asked if there's any more surprising news, I was going to say, if you looked in other realms, I'm sure there is. But, here we're keeping it calm here. But as you've known for a while, the freelance stuff can be daunting sometimes, but at the end of the day, getting to write about basketball is still pretty good. So I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing great. To me, there are very few people who write about basketball better than Seerat, because Seerat can kind of write about basketball in like a wide variety of different ways. She can hit all the really fun personality stuff, but she also really knows her shit basketball-wise, which I really, really respect. So I wanted to have her on to talk at first about All-Stars, but we're just going to kind of say screw All-Stars. And then we're going to talk mostly about Blake Griffin and DeMarcus Cousins here. So before we get into that, I just kind of want to give the outlook of the trade, right? So it's Blake Griffin, Brice Johnson, and Willie Reed to Detroit for Tobias Harris, Avery Bradley, Boban Marjanovic, a first-round pick that is not quite as protected as it probably should be, and a second-round pick in a draft. I'm not sure if it's a 2019 or 2018 second-round pick. But that's the outlay of the deal. What was your initial reaction whenever you heard that this deal happened?
Well, first it was just utter shock. I mean, like you said, just the idea of a Blake Griffin trade happening right now, before anybody else on the team gets traded, 6 months after this elaborate pitch about retiring as a Clipper, and they basically, have this projector playing and all these theatrics to have him basically live through his retirement ceremony. I mean, there's one thing to be said of loyalty in sports. We know that doesn't really exist, but there's a whole other thing to simulate that and have an emotional plea towards staying and then trade the guy in 6 months. So it's definitely a little bit surprising. And then it just, as you peel back every single layer of it, the shock really doesn't stop anywhere. The way I see it.
I'm 100% with
the details of the deal. There's a lot of stuff that's going on there that I have some questions. I'm sure you do too.
I have like a billion questions, and I guess that before even talking about like the basketball side of it, I just kind of want to ask, what do you think of this idea that the Clippers kind of did Blake wrong here? Like, I mean, they did just literally have him live through his retirement ceremony, as you so eloquently put it. Also, though, there's a factor that he couldn't get a 5-year, $170 million contract from anyone else in the NBA. It was only the Clippers, because he would have had to re-sign to get that extra fifth year, which is going to be worth $39 million in year 5, which is insane. He also gets a 15% trade kicker on years 2, 3, and 4 in this deal, does not get it this year, I believe, because he's already at the max contract level, and he does not get it at the 5th year because the 5th year is theoretically a player option, and you don't get trade kicker on player options for those who care about that stuff. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I think that's right. I mean, I just kind of went by the
makes
CBA.
Sense, right?
So I guess, like, what do you think of the idea that this could be potentially something that they did wrong?
Well, I mean, if you want to quantify it in moral terms, I mean, I am generally of the belief that you kind of make your bed in these situations. Again, like you said, Blake is $50 million richer than he would have been if he signed anywhere else. At the same time, I think I've just never seen it done this quite so Machiavellian, right? Like the whole plea is just is to say, like, this is what your identity is going to be, and this is why you should stay and forego the freedom that would be involved with signing somewhere else and really having a chance to contend. That said, there also, I mean, when you look back at the free agency picture for Blake, there weren't really that many places where he could have gone and really become, like, or turned a team into an instant contender. So I'm not sure that argument works too much. At the end of the day, a guy like Blake Griffin, he's an all-star. He's not exactly the type of all-star that I think would command a 5-year max and a no-trade clause. I know a lot of people have been saying, you know, that he should have demanded one, but, you know, there's only so far that you can push it with your talent level, and I think he pretty much maximized it there. Not to get too punny, but you know, at the same time, I do feel bad for him. And this is a guy who loved LA. He loved the lifestyle. He loved representing the Clippers. He pretty much gave them an identity. I mean, a lot of people will pretty much chalk it up to Chris Paul, but Chris Paul was never there if Blake Griffin wasn't there. There is a little bit of nostalgia. I mean, we've seen the Blake Griffin Clippers for about 9 years, or as Blake put it, running out of the hallway in Staples Center. 9 fucking years, man. 9 fucking years. So, I mean, there's a bit of nostalgia, and I do feel bad for him. But at the end of the day, I mean, this happens. Yeah, it sucks, but and I don't like to say that money is everything, but $50 million is a lot of money, and if he wanted to leave it on the table, he very well could have.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it comes down to. Like, at the end of the day, if he really wanted to consider other avenues, he would have officially taken other meetings, right? Like, if I remember correctly,
that's the other thing. Yeah, you're right.
Like, he scheduled with the Suns, but never actually went to that meeting, right? So, like, if he really was considering leaving and really didn't want to take that extra year, then maybe, you know, take a couple other meetings, see what's out there. But, you know,
right.
On some level, though, again, like, that's, you know, I'm committed to LA. I'm not taking any other meetings. It's a very complicated moral situation that I hate trying to dive into, but I think it's important because this is something that potential NBA free agents and agents in general remember. The fact that this guy loved Los Angeles and you just kind of dealt him. I know that you took care of him money-wise, but, you know, there's been a clip floating out there for people who have seen Blake Griffin do stand-up. Like, he talks about, like, imagine if you could just trade your relationship partner for another one. Like, this kind of trade situation doesn't really happen in life, and it doesn't really happen in other sports, right? Like, there's not another profession, really, other than professional sports, where
this
you're
doesn't even
allowed to
happen
be
in the
traded.
NBA. Like this?
Yeah, not like this.
Yeah.
No, not 6 months after.
It's pretty unique.
Yeah, not 6 months after. Like, engineers don't get traded for each other. Even in, like, other countries, like in Australian rules football, you have to, like, say you want to go, and then you get to pick your spot, and then that team has to negotiate with the other team. Or in, you know, soccer, the player has to negotiate a contract with the other organization. And if contract negotiations break down, then he doesn't go there. It's a really interesting moral situation that I think is exacerbated by the, you know, intensity with which the Clippers recruited him, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, let's talk about the basketball, I guess. Like, do you like this for Detroit?
Not really. I mean, I love Blake. He's one of my favorite players. He has been for a long time. That's probably why I'll look back at this, like, just be a little bit more teary-eyed than than a lot of other people. I actually recently just wrote about the Clippers this season, and just to get an early plug in. I'm sure I'll sneak another one in at the end of the show.
Get
but
all of them in that you can.
Sure. Just about the ephemerality of a team. Like, you kind of knew that things were going to change, and that whatever is going on was with the team right now, regardless of whether or not they make the playoffs. It wasn't really like material to anything, really. Like, it wouldn't really affect too much of their decision making, I think. But at the same time, with all of the stress that has been Lob City in the Chris Paul era, it was also just nice to watch players like Blake, when he's been healthy, have fun and really open up their games and be controlling both sides and handling the ball a lot more. And at the same time, obviously, Lou Williams just going on a tear and having a career year at 31. Like, who doesn't like watching something like that? So I mean, it's sad to see it go just because of that. And they were one of the contenders that was, or a pretender, depending on the way that you look at it, that was had a huge spotlight for a lot of years, and it's really come to an end now.
So what do we think of Blake Griffin's game at this stage in his career? Because I think it's undeniable that the injuries have sapped some of his athleticism, but it's also undeniable that Blake has added maybe more than anyone else in the NBA over the course of his career, right? Like, the joke whenever Blake came into the league was, oh, this guy only dunks the basketball. But now he's turned into a multi-dimensional threat who can lead the break on rebounds and grab and go. He can really, really pass the ball from the high post. He can knock down threes. He's taking 6 threes a game right now, which is something that if you would have told, 20-year-old Blake Griffin, I think he might have laughed at you even. Just the way that he's developed throughout the course of his career has made him one of the most fascinating players and prospects to track over the course of the last, 8-9 years now that he's been in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's definitely one of those players where his perception, his actual skill level, there's always been such a gulf, and now there's a gulf between what his perceived value is, and also like the way that he gets baskets and the way that he is effective. I mean, if he was healthy, I think for the majority of his career, I think we'd kind of look at him as like DeMar DeRozan of like power forwards, like go back every year and you never really improve too much defensively, but on offense find a new skill and really add to your game regardless of what it is. And for Blake, a lot of those changes have been so they've been kind of. It's not like he goes back, like he hasn't like gone back and like done the Hakeem, like this is what I'm doing with my moves in the post sort of improvement. But the way that he's learned the game over the course of his career, like the first was just the fact that he immediately, just after his second year, became one of the best passers in the NBA, and we always saw that. But the dramatic like how fast it basically happened was always surprising to me. And then just to see his IQ go up on every single level, and his every year, he'd take like one more step back from the mid-range, and now it's turned into a 3-point shot. So, and there's a lot of people who are just like, Blake's not athletic anymore, therefore, he's just going to decline with age. But I think that's really overblown. Yeah. Obviously the injuries are an issue, but as far as his athleticism, he's a very ground-bound player now. I know it's like kind of shocking to hear, but he hardly even dunks anymore.
When he does, it's still spectacular. But
right. Like he has it, but he's like, I think he's smart enough to know that he can't really be doing it, every game like he used to.
Right.
As well, and it's just, at a certain point, like fatigue factors in. Just, like there's a reason his rookie year was his most exciting in terms of like the dunking and going from like one side of the floor to the other.
Yeah, you bring up his IQ, and I think that extends not only on the floor with what he sees as the run of play is happening, but it extends to off the floor too. He's really worked in a smart way to improve his game, right? I think he naturally understood the progression of the game a lot more quickly than some others did, right? Like, this was a guy that was 6'10". He got so much of his offense around the basket. He was a monster rebounder early on, but instead of trying to develop post moves and trying to, make life harder for himself, essentially, we know now, given that, we've just gotten smarter about analyzing basketball. He realized early on that the ticket to his success was extending his game out, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, especially given the fact that if he didn't do that, he'd be in trouble in terms of having a job in the NBA right now, because where I think the lack of athleticism hurts him the most is on the defensive end. This is something I talk about a little bit, and I'm probably going to write about it at some point soon, but the tweener position now, or the tweener position in the NBA used to be between the 3 and the 4, right? Because most teams played 2 natural bigs, and if you were 6'6", 6'7", and, kind of athletic, kind of not athletic, but were a versatile player, you could struggle to, find a natural player to defend. Could you defend a natural wing? Probably not. Could you defend a natural, power forward? Probably not. Now, though, I think that has shifted down. I think the tweener spot is between the 4 and the 5 position, and Blake is kind of the prototype for those struggles in a lot of ways to me. He's not a natural rim protector, so if you play him as a small ball 5, which, hasn't happened a ton over the years because of DeAndre Jordan, probably won't happen a lot in Detroit because of Andre Drummond, but if you play him as a small ball 5, your defense is going to suffer due to lack of rim protection, but if you play him as a natural 4, he's not the most laterally agile guy, and I think that as the injuries have kind of piled up, he continues to lose some of that lateral agility, and it becomes tougher for him to guard.
Yeah, there's no question about that. That said, though, I think there's probably going to be a lot more room to stagger, I think, in Stan Van Gundy's offense, just because of the way that Doc Rivers has liked to trot out his rotations.
Yes.
The last little while, so I think we will. I don't know how much more we'll see of that. Of course, Drummond has to play a lot of minutes, but we will. I'm sure we'll see more Blake at the 5 than we are used to.
I really hope so, because I think that that could be a really fun way to kind of see him operate. Let him be like a 5 in second units and kind of go from there.
Right.
Kind of close games with Andre Drummond running some high-low and stuff like that.
The thing that I'm really interested in with the Pistons offense is whether. Well, I guess it will tell us more about the Clippers offense, really, is whether or not the chemistry that Griffin and DeAndre developed over the years really needs years to develop, because he's going to, not the same offensive player, but a guy who can really suck up a lot of space down low, can kind of run the same high lows, like you were saying, out of pick and, we all remember, the clockwork Clippers pick and roll action of CP3 hitting Blake at the top of the key, and then Blake finding DeAndre for a lob. Obviously, I think Reggie Jackson complicates matters in ways that yes, everything, in ways that we'll I'm sure we'll discuss as we watch the team play. But I'm really interested to see, is this something that they can really build on the fly? Or are they really going to need a lot of time to learn each other's games? Because in the same token, while DeAndre was never the best playmaker, I mean, he could pass out of a double and not so much a double as much as it was, if there was just a lot of action going on the paint, he can make a clear, easy pass. He could always find Blake down low, but I mean, Andre Drummond's really turned himself into a playmaker, and that'll help Blake too. But it's going to depend, at least this year, on how quickly they get it going, and that matters because right now they're 3 games behind the playoff race. So I don't really know how much time they have this year to get used to each other.
Yeah, to me, the DeAndre Blake, the fact that it took a little bit of time for them to figure out how to play together was, it was partly. I'd say a bigger part of it was due to DeAndre's inability to pass, right? You couldn't run the same things for DeAndre that you ran for Blake. With Drummond, because he's playing so much further from the basket this year naturally, he's running a lot more dribble handoff plays. They're giving him the ball at the high post to operate a little bit and try and find cutters here and there. I think that might present a bit more of a natural fit offensively, where you're running an offense that can be a bit more fluid in role, right? I mean, if Drummond could shoot, things would be totally different, but obviously he's not going to be able to shoot, so you're probably going to want him to act as a diver, but it's not impossible where you could run these crazy, double screen sets with Drummond and Griffin, where, it's a 1, then 4-5 double screen set, and then you could have Griffin pop and have Drummond dive and dish the ball to Blake, who then finds a high low to Drummond, or you could run a 4-5 handoff play where there's a second screener there and have Drummond dive and have Blake there to kind of dump it down to him, or kind of do a lot of different stuff. It creates a lot of versatile offensive options that I'm fascinated by. And again, though, none of this talks about defense, and while Andre has improved defensively, he's certainly become a lot more active of a player, a lot more reactive of a player, maybe is even a better way to put it. This is not going to work well defensively, I don't think.
No, and Drummond, for all of his improvements, he's still, especially as far as rotations go, as much as he has, I think he's always going to be a little bit more slow-footed than a lot of the more athletic centers in the league, but as much as he has locked down one-on-one, he's still very, very inconsistent as far as rotations go. So I think, for this to work defensively, he's really going to have to clamp down. And I'm not saying he can't. He's still half a season into really putting that solid level of effort into defense. So there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. The place that I take it back to offense for a second, the place that I really worry about potentially for Drummond, one of these things that makes this interesting to discuss is that with big men, you never really know how they're going to fit together. We just don't have much of a sample size as far as dominant big men playing together. We saw it with AD and Cousins last year. No one really knew what to make of it, and then when they kind of stumbled out of the gate, it kind of became, oh my God, this is such a horrible fit. And then this season, it sucks that Cousins is now going to be out for the season. I feel horrible for him, but they played fantastic together. So we just really don't know how to make heads or tails of it sometimes. But one of the things I wonder about is how much could this potentially impede Drummond? Because, like you said, he's getting out in the high elbow a lot more, the high post. He's running those dribble handoffs. He's finding cutters. That's really where he has thrived offensively last year. And I thought one of the problems with the Pistons last year was the fact that they had a lot more ball stopping, kind of ironically because of how many pick and rolls they were running. And I think, again, a lot of that does come down to Reggie. Yeah. He's really going to be an X factor in this deal, I think, just as far as how much he can really play against his own instinct and become a playmaking point guard and just give the ball up, because they are going to have to run more pick and roll. They're going to have to revert a little bit back to the offense that they ran last year, and it's going to be interesting to see whether they can make it work or not, and how quickly they can make it work. Yeah,
some of the options here that get created by Blake Griffin is it's just another guy to initiate offense, right?
Right.
That creates complications.
It does. And then the other thing is, when I was thinking about that, okay, if you're going to run point Blake, Reggie's not the point guard you want out there.
No.
He's a 33% career shooter. He likes to dribble the ball. It's just not gonna be a good fit for him to be spotting up around there. I was thinking, ironically, the best point guard for them right there is Avery Bradley.
Yeah, but you have to move Bradley, because I'm sure part of this for the Clippers is getting salary cap relief. You know what I mean?
Of course. It was just a funny, every time you're thinking about things like this, you're always thinking who would work better, right? And then he's one of the first guys that came to my mind, obviously, because naturally I've been thinking about him a lot today, but,
the funny thing is that a really interesting idea for me is if you're going to run point Blake, you should probably just play Luke Kennard at point guard. You're going to get eviscerated defensively, but he's just going to shoot threes and you're going to be fine.
Yeah, you can just play really big if you want to add some, just make sure everybody can shoot. You got Kennard, and then move Tolliver up a spot to the 3. He's probably one of their best shooters, and then have Bullock at the 2, and then you kind of have 4 shooters if you're willing to call Griffin a shooter.
Or maybe it's Langston Galloway. Maybe you have Langston Galloway as your some kind of one next to Kennard.
They are kind of doomed. They are kind of doomed as far as lateral quickness goes anyway, right? So why not just do the experiment and see if you can just outshoot and out rebound teams on your way to victory. That's the other place where you really got to worry about the Pistons. It's not like they just gave up 2 of their best assets. They also gave up their 2 best 3-point shooters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll talk about Tobias Harris in a second, because I'm a pretty big fan of what I've seen of him this year. But
I thought you were saying, when you said that you thought there was another asset that you thought was better than Blake Griffin, I thought you were going with Willie Green, but yes.
Brice Johnson. Let's be
Oh,
clear
okay,
here.
my bad.
So this Pistons roster now going forward is kind of primed for a trade still, I think. Stanley Johnson doesn't really fit anymore because you have Blake. They've been kind of downshifting Stanley Johnson to the 4 more often because he's just been struggling so much playing the 3. So if I'm them, I'm probably trying to trade Stanley Johnson and parlay him into some sort of, I guess, point guard / lead guard that can help me right now, I guess. Like, what is the next move for you?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of actually close to what I had in mind as well. And the thing I was thinking was, I mean, I think Stanley Johnson is probably better than whatever the Cavs are going to give up for George Hill.
It's probably true. I actually kind of did
that. I know that George Hill is like the classic guy that everybody goes to and they're like, hey, this team kind of needs a point guard.
The problem is, how do you match salaries, though?
Yeah, how much is George Hill making this season?
It's like 19, so you have to get up there in terms of salary.
Will they take on John Lewis' contract? Maybe throw in some sweetener?
I mean, if I'm the Kings, I probably just take the Cavs offer in that case. Like, where I'm at least getting... so what, Lore has 2 years after this one, I think, right? At like $10 million a year. So I'd probably rather just have the cap relief that's Channing Frye plus 1 year of Iman Shumpert and like a second-round pick. I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a really good fit, though. I love the idea of George Hill with these guys now. I mean... That'd
be another way of making it work. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily give up more picks, but clearly Stan Van Gundy has no problem unnecessarily adding picks onto a deal, as we just learned today. So maybe they could throw in a second-round pick that could because then it kind of gives, in a sense. I mean, if they draft somebody that's passable, it kind of would give the Kings 2 assets, as opposed to just 1 plus Iman, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, at this point, like, is the Pistons' best perimeter player Reggie Bullock? Might be Reggie. It's probably still Reggie Jackson, but like Reggie Jackson takes away as much as he adds sometimes. Like,
I mean, it might be Ish Smith.
It might be Ish Smith. Ish Smith is actually kind of a useful player now for them. Like this deal for the Pistons, we'll talk about the Clippers momentarily here, but this deal for the Pistons is basically all about saving Stan Van Gundy's job, it seems like to me. It's a risky ass move. Blake Griffin has an awful lot of downside due to the injuries. This is not a move that I'm particularly a huge fan of for them, if only because Blake Griffin is probably the riskiest asset in the entire NBA due to his long-term contract and injury history. They also don't really have any maneuverability now in terms of...
this is their team, I think.
Like, this is their team.
After the next few moves that they make, which I'm sure something's coming.
Like, Stanley Johnson will probably get dealt. They will probably end up signing someone for the mid-level at some point this summer. But, like, I can't tell you that I'm a huge fan of what they have as their core right now. I wasn't a huge fan of what they had as their core before, but this probably just gives them a higher floor but a lower ceiling now, right?
Well, I mean, I think what they're doing is they're basically creating Clippers East, and like, I mean, you never want to give up your flexibility to create Clippers East.
Well, they're giving up their flexibility to create Clippers East, replacing Chris Paul with Reggie Jackson.
Right. Fair enough. Good point.
That's an even scarier proposition, I think. Let's talk about this from the Clippers' perspective. I think Tobias Harris is the best asset in this deal. Tobias Harris is averaging 18 points and 5 rebounds per game on 45% shooting from the field, 40% from 3, 85% from the line. It's not like he's appreciably worse than Blake Griffin defensively. He's not great defensively, admittedly, but he comes at a relative fraction of the cost. I want to say that he's making around $16 million this year, something in that range. So you're still you're getting production from Tobias Harris, who can knock down shots, who is going to help you this year, but he's also 25, doesn't have any sort of real injury history, known as a really good
very
dude.
Athletic.
Yeah, very athletic. Also known as a very good dude who's worked his ass off over the course of his career. I think you can...
It's consistently gotten better, too, so I don't think this is his ceiling. I see some regression in his game, but I think over the years, at least.
Yeah, like, eventually he's going to cap out, but I don't think we know that he's capped out yet, is maybe the best way to put it, just given the way he's improved throughout his career. I don't know what to even... And
it's one thing, this is like the other thing that goes back to like the loyalty point with the Clippers. Like, it's one thing to be loyal, and it's a whole other thing to have two assets thrown at you on pretty good deals and get a first-round pick and a second-round pick and say, no, we're not trading this guy that we have signed to like the worst, might end up being one of the worst contracts in the league if Blake continues to be as injury prone as he's been.
Well, the craziest part about this is, like, not only now have the Pistons dealt Tobias Harris to take on all of this risk in Blake Griffin, right? Mm-hmm. That's not even the worst, like...
No, they gave him stuff for it. It's just... I don't know. I don't like to be overly reactionary to trades right as they happen, because then I find that I put my foot in my mouth. But this is, like, it's kind of hilarious, right?
Well, the funnier thing is that, like, this isn't even the worst, like, way that Tobias Harris has been summarily dumped in a questionable scenario.
This is true.
Like, the Magic gave up Tobias Harris to go out and sign Bismack Biyombo, and who was the other one that they signed? They signed someone else, like, to just clear cap space and give out money to players that suck. So... Like,
that isn't even the deal that I thought that you were referencing. I'm sorry. You're referencing. I'm talking about the time that they tried JJ Redick for Tobias. The Bucks did it for 2 months of JJ Redick. Did they make the playoffs that year? Well, either way, they were first round out. JJ Redick trashes the city and then signs with the Clippers. Or not. I don't know if he trashed the city actually, but he made it very clear that he wasn't a fan of playing there.
Is there any, like, player in the NBA that has been summarily dumped as much as Tobias Harris that's actually good? Like, he's really good.
Like, yeah, I would have said Isaiah before he got traded this last time, but maybe no.
It's crazy. Like, he's actually a valuable basketball player, but I'm going to have to, like, ask about this. Like, I'm going to have to ask NBA friends about this, because I need to know why people continue to just deal him for, like, nothing, or for
maybe there's something behind it.
But, like, he's known as a relatively good dude.
Yeah, I've never heard anything, and
like, and plus,
it doesn't seem like there's any red flags.
And, like, you watch him on TV when he's done, like, some, like, baseline analyst work. He's very well spoken. He's smart. It's a weird situation there. I can't really understand it, but they're going to get him now, and I mean, there's a downgrade from Blake Griffin to Tobias Harris. It's not like a wild, insane downgrade to where their season is over. Plus, they get Avery Bradley, who's going to help them continue to compete going forward. Plus, they get Boban, who I just want to be best friends with out here in Los Angeles. Like, Boban, hit me up. They get a 2018... It's all
just adding to the new good vibes culture in LA, Boban, right there.
I know, I'm all about it. Plus, they get a 2018 first-round pick that, again, I don't think is as protected as it should be. Like, this could easily turn into a lottery pick this year for the Clippers that is, like, 10th in this draft.
Right. But one thing I've been thinking is, like, how many times out of 10 do the Clippers not do this deal? Like, it's 0.5, right?
I mean, the only thing that would stop you from doing this deal is loyalty to Blake. Like, maybe from an asset valuation perspective, there's no reason to not do this deal, because not only, or you know what, actually I'll play this. So say that LeBron James is a realistic outcome for them in free agency, and I think that that's kind of what they're setting up for, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe LeBron wants more star power there, but I've never been a huge fan of the Blake Griffin, LeBron James combination. So, maybe this just clears out more and it actually creates more cap space because they're going to get Avery Bradley's expiring contract here. I don't know. Like, this is just kind of, it's not a home run because anytime you trade your franchise player and probably become a little bit worse this year, it's hard for me to say that, but this is a smart deal for the Clippers, I think. Like, this is a great way to transition your franchise from Lob City into a new era with a new front office, by the way. Like Michael Winger, Trent Redden, obviously Jerry West came in this summer as well. Lawrence Frank is kind of running things now. But, like, there are a lot of new guys in that front office. It's one of the best in terms of talent. I don't know if they're, on the same page yet. I mean, it seems like they are if they're making a deal of this magnitude. But, I mean,
this is the kind of phone call you get and you quickly get on the same page.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, from a front office talent perspective, this is a really smart group. So, I don't know. Like, this makes just total sense to me. I mean, if they really wanted to go crazy here, like, you could just move Avery Bradley and his expiring contract on and maybe get a late first-round pick. Like, if you're the Cavs there.
No,
like,
absolutely.
If you're the Cavs,
that's what I was thinking.
Why are you not giving up your, like, the Cleveland first-round pick for Avery Bradley? Because, like, that actually matches up directly with the Channing Frye contract.
With how hot the Clippers are running after this trade, maybe they'll get the Nets pick for him.
I mean, maybe that's the move. Maybe it's now Avery Bradley and DeAndre Jordan for Tristan Thompson, the Nets pick, and Channing Frye, and you might have to do something else to make the salaries match, but maybe that's the move now. Maybe that's how you get your hands on that Brooklyn pick. You now get Avery Bradley who can help them, and you now get DeAndre Jordan who can help them.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused on whether or not the Cavs are willing to put it on the table. I mean, if I'm them, I'm just not doing it.
I mean, I agree. You're talking to someone who values the draft as much as anyone, but, like, I don't know. Like, if I'm them and LeBron tells me that if we win this year, I will stay, I might be willing to do it.
Yeah, okay. If it comes down to that, I think. I mean. I also don't know how much that guarantees I'm a win. I mean, nothing really guarantees I'm a win. It's tough. I also can't really imagine a world where I just don't see LeBron doing that. I think he set himself up so peacefully for leaving that I don't think that he would really ruin things like that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, the other aspect of this is, again, is how close can they actually get to winning? How much does Avery Bradley help you beat the Warriors?
I think it does.
I was going to say, I think
there's appreciable ways that it really, really does. So, I mean, if you're going to be serious about it, he's the guy to get.
Yeah, like, you can just run him out against Steph Curry and make Steph Curry's life hell. Like, that really helps you against the Warriors. It frees up potentially Jay Crowder or someone like that to guard Klay Thompson, because you can have LeBron on Durant, and you can have, DeAndre on Dre. Doesn't sound like a great matchup to me, but you can find different ways to mix and match.
Anytime you can facilitate LeBron plus shooters lineup and also have a defensive asset on the floor is just like, that's the formula, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's a really interesting kind of hypothetical trade that I'm actually buying more into the more I think of it, although I don't think they will trade the Nets pick for it. You mentioned, I mean, do you have anything else to say about this deal beyond everything?
I mean, I'm sure if we kept talking about it, we could keep going for a while. I mean, I guess we have been sort of vaguely, we've been making fun of the Pistons for it while only kind of vaguely explaining ourselves. And, like, let me just put it this way. If you trade Avery Bradley, you should be getting a first-round pick in return, not adding one to the deal.
Yeah, I mean, so like, trying to break this trade up into assets, right? So, like, is there a world where you would say Tobias Harris, Boban, and a 2018 first gets you Blake Griffin? I mean, like I said, I'd probably rather have Harris anyway if I was the Clippers, but, like, that's not a crazy, unreasonable deal.
It's
right?
It's not. When I actually first saw the deal, I hadn't even heard about the picks, and I was like, oh, okay.
But then you think about it from an asset perspective, and then you essentially traded Avery Bradley in a second for Brice Johnson and Willie Reed. That's
Sorry?
not. I mean, you think about it from an asset perspective,
All
then
right. Okay.
we just broke up that trade, right? Then the secondary part of this trade is Avery Bradley for Brice Johnson and Willie Reed, except that you added in a second-round pick to dump Avery Bradley.
I had a first-round pick.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I don't... This is not something that seems... It seems short-sighted. It seems dangerous. It seems risky. When his...
I also think, like, I mean, even in, like, again, not to rag on them too much, but even in the context of it being short-sighted, you can be short-sighted and still make a better trade than this. I mean, I just imagine, like, there are teams that you could go to with that package, and I think, like, you know, maybe you're not getting somebody's franchise player, but at the same time, in the context of this guy being a franchise player, he's also very, very injury prone, and is going to have on the back end of that contract is going to be horrible. I think if you could take that to a lot of teams and get much better than Blake Griffin.
I mean, does this deal get you Marc Gasol and Tyreke Evans?
I think so.
I think it probably would too. I mean, Tobias Harris is a better asset than I think anything they're going to get from Marc Gasol. You're giving up a potential lottery first-round pick, and they can flip Avery Bradley after they flip, or since they've already flipped Tyreke Evans. So
I mean, like this thing is basically, this deal is a gift to any team that wants to start rebuilding. And out of the teams that want to start doing that, like, you kind of, I mean, Blake's kind of on the bottom end of the guys that you're looking to trade, right? And why don't you hold on to this for a while, like maybe add another pick, less protections, and see if you can get Anthony Davis.
Yeah, like, I don't know if it gets you Anthony Davis, and maybe when Anthony Davis comes available, Stan Van Gundy is already out of a job. But, like,
this is true. That's fair.
I mean, honestly, like, I don't even think this
I mean,
is
you
a deal
definitely
that
have
gets
to add
Anthony
more,
Davis.
but I'm just saying, if
like,
you're
I know
already
what you
giving up
mean.
this much.
Yeah, like, I totally understand what you mean, and I think you're right. Like, if you're... I mean, if you're
gonna, like, my point is, if you're gonna swing for the fences, then swing for the fences.
Like, there's really not even another asset out there that is similar to Blake, the more I look at the league, right? Like, Marc Gasol's an interesting one, I think, that is kind of close as, like, a flawed star that's probably best as a secondary player. But, like, I mean, if you're the Nuggets, no. I mean, like, Paul Millsap's probably not quite as good as Blake. I mean, maybe he is, but he's young. He's older and doesn't have as much star power, so you probably don't want to do that deal.
I mean, if you're looking at it through Stan Van Gundy's prison right now of saving his job, Blake Griffin is definitely a bigger name than Millsap, but I mean, Millsap comes with the benefit of being a two-way player and is probably a lot easier to work into that lineup quickly. And
yeah,
I mean, despite the fact that he is out right now, is far less injury prone too.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk injuries, I feel a lot more confident in Paul Millsap than I do in Blake Griffin. Yeah, this is it's a weird decision from the Pistons' perspective. I kind of understand it just because you need to make a move. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe also Stan Van Gundy just kind of feels like I can make a defense work kind of out of anything. I mean, they're 12th in defensive efficiency right now. I mean, maybe, like, Stan's just an awesome defensive coach. They were 8th in defensive efficiency last year. He just might figure this out. You know what I mean? Like, he is good enough to where he can do that, but it's a questionable decision from an asset perspective, I think.
Right. I mean, like, I think how they perform on the court this year is separate from this, aside from how it will impact his job security. Because I think, I mean, it's going to be interesting. There's ways that it could end up being a disaster, like we discussed. There's also ways that it could be really exciting. It really could work, but that's still to me is a separate discussion from what they gave up. Because, I mean, the deal that they gave up there is kind of what you do when you want to start getting a star that isn't necessarily, like, going for scraps. Which essentially is kind of what they did if we are to believe that the Clippers wanted to make Blake this franchise player. Like, maybe this is really what what it took to grease the wheels a little bit. But then you start, if you're looking at it from that perspective, then the pool of people that you should be looking to get is just so much bigger.
Well, even more than that, I think that this is the deal you make when you're one piece away, not when you're three pieces away. Like,
right.
How else do they maneuver now? Like we said, we trade Stanley Johnson, but like, what do you trade Langston Galloway? I actually kind of like the Langston Galloway fit on this roster now. Reggie Jackson's a really tough deal. That contract is underwater. So, like, I don't know exactly if you're getting an asset for him necessarily. Henry Ellenson has not done anything yet as a young player, so he probably does not have a lot of value. Luke Kennard, I don't know if Luke Kennard has a ton of value around the league. John Moore.
I don't know about that. I mean,
well, do people think that he can be a starter, though? I don't know if that's even how I feel about him.
No, I think he's definitely got starter potential. I mean, he's incredibly young. I really want to put, like, too bad of a ceiling on him that he can never be a starter, especially since, like, I mean, he has shown some things.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, anytime you can shoot 43% from the field in your rookie year, or 43% from three, I guess that maybe you can be a starter, but his defense is always going to be an issue. Like, he's going to be a starter that you have to work around, not work, like, with, you know? And I think it's harder for rotation players to be that, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, he probably have value. You could deal him and get something. I'm not saying that he's like a negative asset, but I mean, I don't know if he's getting you a starter. Like, I don't know if he's getting you a guy on an expiring deal that can help you right now. Yeah, it's just a weird deal. It's a very strange deal to me. Let's talk about DeMarcus Cousins, though. You brought up earlier how sad it is that DeMarcus Cousins is out for the year. This was originally the reason that I brought you on, Seerat. We finally get here now. Tell me how sad you are about DeMarcus Cousins.
I mean, it's just one of the more deflating situations in the NBA. When you hear the word Achilles associated with an NBA player, like you always, even knowing the best that you're hoping for is just never that good. It's probably, I mean, considering how much faster players are recovering from ACL injuries, it's probably just a worse injury for a basketball player to get, especially for a basketball player who is in his prime. We've seen some younger guys recover, but I mean, it's just so deflating. I don't really want to make projections about what this is going to mean for his career going forward. I think he's kind of a unique player as far as recovery goes. He's always been ground bound. But again, it's just one of those injuries that completely it kills your mobility, and it just sucks. It sucks for his career. It sucks for the Pelicans. It sucks for their playoff bid. His free agency. It's the worst possible timing you could even imagine.
Yeah, and now they have to make very real decisions about how they move forward with this organization starting this offseason, right? Like, so you're DeMarcus Cousins. They probably have to offer him a 5th year, I would think, to continue to keep him, right? Like, he's going to have...
But can you even consider doing that, though?
But he's going to have 4-year offers elsewhere. Like, someone is going to offer him 4 years, $25 million.
I don't know. Is he, like, who... I mean, when you consider the teams that have cap space, who's going to offer him a 4-year max? I mean, this is a guy that a lot of front offices have, fair or not, had questions about and said, we wouldn't trade for this guy. We don't want to sign this guy. And then you add this on top of it. I think, obviously somebody's going to do it. Like the old NBA saying is, all it takes is one asshole. But it's just, I can't imagine there being a high bidding war for his services.
Well, this is a funny one. Say the Clippers move DeAndre Jordan. They sign LeBron James and are looking for a second star. They miss out on Paul George, who goes to the Lakers. They need to find a second star to pair with LeBron, I think is the better way to put it, before signing LeBron.
I mean, I think if LeBron goes to the Clippers, Paul George is right behind.
That's probably true. I don't know.
And there's just no reason for Paul George to never do that, right? But
yeah.
And again, I think once you add LeBron, you think you don't really have to be too desperate.
Yeah, it's true. I'm just trying to think of teams. Like, Okay, let's say this. The Lakers miss out on LeBron and Paul George. What do?
Would they?
It kind of fits with the rest of their roster, doesn't it? Like, if you consider the core to be Lonzo, Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, it kind of fits, right?
It does. I also think they're so young, though, that do you really want to saddle your future in this guy that just had one of the NBA's worst injuries and is going to spend the majority of his first year rehabbing and then working his way back, and then all of a sudden, he's a big man on the back end of his contract.
No, but if you're Magic Johnson and you traded away D'Angelo Russell to get cap space next summer, and DeMarcus Cousins is the only one sitting there.
I mean, I think Magic's been kind of lucky in that he's not feeling too much of the pressure for that just because D'Angelo's been out for so much of the season.
I would love D'Angelo Russell to come back and just drop 35 a game.
That would be awesome. I mean, he was tearing it up. He was
legit really good before he got hurt. And, part of this, to be clear about the Lakers, like, these knee issues aren't new for D'Angelo Russell. Like, this is not something they were unaware of with him. So I'm sure that played a role in why they dealt him too. So, like, maybe they're feeling okay about this right now. I don't know. I mean, it sucks. It just sucks. Before even getting into, like, the contract stuff that we just got into, even just on a human level, it is terrible because this dude is probably the best player in NBA history to never play in the playoffs. Like, is that?
Yeah, and that's another thing that makes it so, like, they were on their way, right?
Like, it just sucks. And he's having, like, I said earlier this year, I thought he was one of the 5 best offensive players in the league. I kind of still believe that. Like,
yeah.
I
think that's a totally fair take. Sorry, you go ahead.
He's so multidimensional. Like, everything he can shoot. He's shooting 6 threes a game at 35% now. He's averaging 5 assists a game because he's an incredible passer, not only from the low post, but also from the high post and out at the 3-point line. Is he the best post-up threat in the NBA?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think he is too. Like, I know that the turnovers are a significant problem with his game, but
they are. But I think on the right team, I don't even think that's too much of a problem. I mean, he plays in. I mean, a lot of the turnovers come down to it is definitely his fault, and he gets he gets a little bit overzealous with the ball. But he also plays on a roster that doesn't have a lot of room for him to work. Doesn't have a lot of ball handlers. He's creating way more. Like, I think Cousins is a fantastic playmaker, especially for a 5. But he is way, way overstretching his duties, especially when AD isn't on the floor.
And
so I think in the right situation, those turnovers, like, a lot of them would organically come down. A lot of it would have to come down to Cousins not making a couple of boneheaded mistakes as he does on occasion. But I mean, a lot of it, I think, is just it is somewhat situation.
Yeah, and look, like, I'm not about to shit on Anthony Davis here when I say this. Like, Anthony Davis is one of the 7 best players in the NBA. He's a better overall player than DeMarcus Cousins, but Davis is still relatively limited in terms of what he actually creates for himself. You know what I mean? Like, he's still at his best as a pick-and-pop guy, pick-and-roll guy, diver, cutter, really, really good offensive rebounder. And I'm not saying he can't attack a closeout and drive to the lane and score, but I mean, among the 10 best players in the league, he's probably the weakest among those guys as a creator. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. He's always been best coming off of screens and getting a running start.
Right.
To me.
Right.
And he's destructive when he does that. But the difference, I mean, I haven't really looked at, like, the synergy stuff on this, but I would not be shocked if his off-screen numbers versus his ISO numbers are just one of the more staggering differences in the league for superstars.
Well, now I have to look this up because I find it very, very interesting. Just from the perspective of, is he like this awesome creator that we think of naturally with the ball in his hands? 78th percentile on post-ups. That's really good. Has 150 possessions as a roll man. 127 as a spot-up guy, bunch of possessions in transition and cutting. He only has 64 possessions in isolation this year, though. You know what I mean? Like, and he's not a pick-and-roll ball handler. So what?
I think he's one of those guys where because he attracts so much, like his gravity is
unbelievable
everywhere on the court, too. I mean, it's not really relegated to one spot, despite the fact that obviously the closer you get him to the paint, the better he is. But so I think it's more about finding the way for an offense to create more looks for him. And also, you know what? On another note, maybe AD would isolate and have developed that part of his game a lot more if New Orleans had any space to put around him.
The New Orleans. I mean, here's the deal with them now. If they lose DeMarcus Cousins this offseason, I think they really have to take a serious look at trading Anthony Davis. Just from an asset perspective, because if you lose DeMarcus Cousins, you're still in a pretty significant cap hole due to Davis, Drew Holiday, Etuan Moore, Solomon Hills deals. You still have a Schick on the books for another year. So it would be really hard to improve the roster to where they can get to the playoffs next year if you lose DeMarcus Cousins. We really could look back at the Cousins deal and say this is how the Davis era in New Orleans ended, right?
Right. And honestly, like, if we look at it like that, that was the best move they made, trading Buddy Hield in the first-round pick for DeMarcus Cousins.
What the fuck was Vivek doing?
By the way, since you mentioned Ashik and we're talking about bad franchises, I decided who's going to offer Cousins a max this summer.
Houston?
Chicago.
I thought about that too. That was interesting to me. Like,
I mean, they could do it.
They really might do it. Like that's.
Like, they really could.
They'd have to offload Robin Lopez, but I don't think that's that hard. He'd have, I think, 1 year left on that contract. Maybe two.
I mean, he's a very serviceable player.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do that.
And if you're kind of building for the summer of 2019, and he's on an expiring deal at like $14 million or so, if I remember correctly, that actually really helps you. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. I mean, for what it's worth here, we just kind of shit on Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield is averaging like 13 points a game, 43% from three, 55 true shooting percentage with an above average PER. And that's really hard to do as a wing just because you naturally get fewer rebounds and you're not going to have as many assist opportunities. He's actually kind of lived up to what people thought he would be.
It's just not what Vivek thought he would be.
Yeah, Vivek thought he was Steph Curry, and he's more like better Jody Meeks.
Right.
Which is, again, I think better Jody Meeks is probably a starter.
I think Buddy Hield's a starter.
Yeah. He just has way too much.
And I didn't mean to make Buddy Hield the butt of the joke. The butt of the joke is the Kings.
Yeah, the butt of the joke is Vivek. Man, that's a bad spot.
Yeah, so I mean, when you look at the Pelicans right now, the problem is they don't have a lot of time as far as, just given how tied up they are to build around Davis. And every single year or deadline that you pass without moving him is just a year that you're going to get less from him for trading him.
Yeah. No, that's true.
It's just a matter of, to me, it's about seeing the writing on the wall. I understand that that's incredibly hard to do when you're the person who has to trade Anthony Davis, so I wouldn't begrudge them for not doing it right now. But at the same time, I think everybody on the outside sees what's going to happen.
I'm just very glad that you moved away from Sacramento because I was about to start making Lady Bird jokes. So that was a good thing. Yeah, no, I mean, the other thing is that, those guys might not be there. Dell Demps might not be there. Who the hell knows what's going on with the fact that, Mickey Loomis, the Saints general manager, might have a role in that front office for some unknown reason. Well, it's known. But, why is he there? The coaching staff, Alvin Gentry, and those guys might not be there. It's a very, very complex situation, and I really feel bad that this really might be how it ends. I hope that they make the playoffs, though. I hope that they can find a way to battle through this Cousins injury. because having Anthony Davis in the playoffs just makes the playoffs better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just don't really see them. I mean, I was so excited for the Pelicans in the playoffs just because they're such a matchup nightmare.
Yeah.
With Cousins and Davis. It would have been really exciting. And, it's something that earlier in the season I kind of thought was, that could really, really pose problems if they figure some things out and guys start hitting shots at the right times. It really, who's equipped in a playoff series to guard those guys in 7 games?
Yeah,
it would have been really tough. It would have been really interesting just as far as conversations go about what the next style of basketball should be and how to combat like a Warrior style offense or style defense rather.
I mean, they just beat the Celtics and Rockets in I think a 2-week period, right? And obviously DeMarcus gets hurt in that Rockets game and it just sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of thing that we were hoping to see from them all along, the ability to potentially compete, against really good teams. They beat the Thunder and Spurs in like a 2-game proximity of each other earlier this year. Yeah, it's just a not fun deal. Like, I just really wanted DeMarcus Cousins to be happy. I feel so bad. Because, this is a guy that's been unfairly shit on throughout his career, too. Right? Like,
yeah.
Everyone knows the Clay Travis thing. DeMarcus Cousins will be arrested within the next 6 years or some bullshit like that, like race baiting absurdity. And DeMarcus Cousins has never been anything but, like, okay, maybe a problematic locker room presence that can be prickly, but also not a bad dude, like
right,
not a guy
right.
that, he does a ton for the community. He does a ton for underprivileged people. It's a shitty situation.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who came into the league with the same sort of thing. Like, we great talent, we don't know what his attitude is going to be like. And over the years, I think for everybody that was ringing that bell, I think he was much better than what the warnings were. But like every so often, he plays into it, and there have been reports of people on Sacramento's staff, and not like GMs or anything, but people just say that he's not a very pleasant person to work with. And obviously, there's complaining to the referees, but those are such small scale problems when you compare that to the reputation that he's acquired over the years. Yeah,
no,
it would have just really been nice to see him in the playoffs, see him prosper, and just show everybody how good he is. Like, he's basically, I can't remember somebody wrote this take, and I was a little bit angry because I sort of had the take. I can't remember who it was, so I can't credit them, but he's like the James Harden of the 5 position.
It's take thievery.
Nobody really even, yeah, I know, right? Like, just straight out of my mind. I think a lot of people just kind of once a trade happened, a lot of people haven't really checked in with, not NBA writers or anything, people that are plugged in, but as far as his larger perception goes, this guy leads big men in charges drawn, and he still has a reputation as a bad defender, and by all means he's, there are times he loses focus and he's not the best one-on-one guy. He's obviously a little bit slow-footed, but man, you shouldn't be calling him a bad defender, though.
Yeah. No. You're preaching to the choir here. I 100% agree. It just sucks. The whole deal is terrible.
Yeah.
Seerat, remind the people where they can find your work. You didn't even plug as often as I thought you would. You plugged your brain, but you did not necessarily plug your places of employment. So I'm going to open the floor for you to do that now.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I just started with the one right away, and then I really undersold it after that. I write weekly at the SB Nation, which was the Clippers article that I was talking about earlier. Raptor stuff at The Athletic. Have a few things this week. Fan-sided every so often. Just freelance life basically, and kind of a little bit of everywhere. But those are my main spots. I did a thing at Rolling Stone with Kyle Kuzma, just a Q&A. That was fun. And then we'll see what's to come. I never really know.
Go follow Seerat on Twitter at Go on ahead and give me it.
Damian Trillard.
Damian Trillard is a fucking fantastic Twitter name, and you should follow her for that alone. I want to hear the story on how you came up with Damian Trillard before we go, actually.
Oh, I actually just told this story on a other podcast, and it's highly unentertaining. I used to change my Twitter handle a lot, actually. Like, I had a bunch of like kind of wacky handles. I don't think that's a word anybody says anymore. Any clout I built up for saying my handle was Damian Trillard, I just lost there by saying wacky. But yeah, like I just changed my handle a lot, and then this one kind of stuck. I can't even remember what the other ones were, but they're all just like kind of weird stuff. And yeah, I don't know. This one was a hit, so I never really changed it. And now, I mean, like, that's just, I think I just got to stick with it, even though increasingly, as I write more, feels like a little bit unprofessional, but like, I don't know, I'm just stuck. I'm just stuck here.
As long as you have your name in the handle, I think you're fine, or your name in the Twitter thing, you're fine. Mm-hmm. You know, people will find you.
Fair enough.
Go follow Damian Trillard, a.k.a. Seerat Sohi, on Twitter. Please employ her, by the way, if you're listening to this and you have that power. Seerat is excellent. Like I said at the top, she does a really great, creative, wide variety of different things. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. We also are up on Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, Android. Wherever you get podcasts, I think we're probably up there now. Please go subscribe to The Athletic. Keep me employed. That would be great.
Me.
I appreciate that. Please keep Seerat employed as well, because she writes great stuff over there too. We'll be back later in the week. Not sure who I'm going to get. I'm obviously going to have Cole on later in the week, but I'll have someone else on to kind of talk about All-Star, given the fact that got shuttled today due to the Blake Griffin news. But until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.